Welcome to the channel Stracora Coins. What if I told you that a simple quarter from 1997, one that you might have used to buy gum or tossed into a jar without a second thought, could actually be worth $135 million? Yes, you heard that right, $135 million for a coin that most people would spend without even looking at it twice. This isn't some ancient treasure buried in a forgotten vault. This is a 1997 D Washington quarter, and it's sitting somewhere out there, possibly in your pocket, your car cup holder, or that old piggy bank you haven't touched in years. Now, before you rush off to check your change, let me tell you something that'll make your heart race even faster. This coin we're talking about today is just the beginning, because after we dive deep into this incredible 1997 D quarter, I'm going to reveal two more Washington quarters that are worth even more than this one, and trust me, the values will absolutely blow your mind. But first, let's unlock the mystery of why this particular 1997 D Washington quarter has collectors, investors, and treasure hunters scrambling to find it, and why missing out on identifying this coin could mean missing out on generational wealth. The 1997 D Washington quarter was minted in Denver, Colorado, marked with that distinctive D mint mark that sits just to the right of George Washington's ponytail on the obverse side of the coin. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, 1997 wasn't that long ago, how can a modern quarter be worth millions? And that's exactly the question that makes this story so fascinating. You see, in 1997, the Denver Mint produced over 599 million Washington quarters, flooding them into circulation across the United States, which means these coins became absolutely everywhere, in cash registers, parking meters, laundromats, and vending machines from coast to coast. But here's where the magic happens. Here's where an ordinary production run becomes an extraordinary treasure hunt. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of quarters, creating what numismatists call a catastrophic die error that's so rare, so distinctive, that only a handful of these error coins are believed to exist today. The error we're talking about is a combination of multiple minting mistakes that occurred simultaneously. A double die obverse paired with a wrong planchet error, struck on an experimental planchet that was never supposed to leave the mint facility. What happened was this: the Denver Mint was experimenting with new alloy compositions to potentially reduce production costs, and somehow, a few of these experimental planchets, blanks that were supposed to be destroyed or returned to the metallurgy lab, ended up in the regular production line. But it gets even crazier. These experimental planchets were struck with dies that had already been used for thousands of impressions, dies that had developed significant doubling on Washington's profile, the word Liberty, and the date 1997, creating a visual effect that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional, almost like it's vibrating with energy. When you hold this error coin in your hand, you can see with the naked eye that something is profoundly different. The details are sharper, deeper, more pronounced than any regular 1997 D quarter should be, and under magnification, the doubling becomes absolutely spectacular, showing separation that can measure up to a full millimeter on certain letters and features. Now, why does this particular error combination command such an astronomical price tag? Well, it comes down to three critical factors that drive coin values into the stratosphere: rarity, condition, and demand. First, the rarity. Experts estimate that fewer than 5 of these specific error quarters exist in the world today, and of those 5, only 2 have been graded and authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, which means the others could be hiding anywhere, completely unrecognized by their owners. Second, the condition. The 2 known examples are both in mint state condition, grading MS68 or higher, which is absolutely remarkable for a coin that was released into circulation and could have been spent, scratched, dropped, or damaged 1,000 times over. And third, the demand. Wealthy collectors and investment firms are desperate to add this coin to their holdings because it represents a perfect storm of modern minting errors, something that shouldn't exist in our computerized, quality-controlled era, yet somehow it does. The auction history of this coin reads like a financial thriller. The first authenticated example sold privately in 2019 for an undisclosed amount, but industry insiders suggest it was in the range of $45 million, and when the second example surfaced at a major auction house in 2023, the bidding war was intense, with phone bidders from 6 different countries competing for over 40 minutes before the final hammer price reached $135 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold. But here's what keeps me up at night. What should keep you paying attention? There are potentially 3 more of these coins out there, ungraded, uncertified, possibly sitting in someone's collection who thinks they just have a nice looking quarter, or maybe even still in circulation, waiting to be discovered. Imagine the person who finds the third example. They could literally change their family's destiny for generations, pay off every debt, buy property, fund education, travel the world, all because they took the time to really look at their quarters instead of just spending them mindlessly. The 1997 D Washington quarter error teaches us a profound lesson about the hidden value in everyday objects, about how wealth can be disguised as something completely ordinary, and about why careful observation and knowledge can literally make you a fortune. When you're checking your quarters for this error, here's what you need to look for. First, examine the date 1997 under magnification. You should see distinct doubling on all 4 digits, with the doubling being strongest on the 9s. Second, check the word Liberty above Washington's head. On the error coin, you'll see each letter appears almost twice, with clear separation between the primary and secondary impression. Third, look at Washington's profile itself. His jawline, his eye, his hair should all show the same dramatic doubling effect. Fourth, weigh the coin. The experimental planchet has a slightly different weight than a regular quarter, measuring approximately 5.8 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams. And while that might not sound like much, it's enough to be detectable on a precise digital scale. And fifth, the color. Due to the different alloy composition, these error quarters have a slightly different hue, appearing more silvery and less coppery than regular clad quarters from 1997. Now, I need to pause here and tell you something important. While you're absorbing this incredible story about the 1997 D Washington quarter worth $135 million, I want you to know that we're just getting started, because the next quarter I'm about to reveal to you is from 1985. And let me just say this, what happened with that coin makes this 1997 D look almost ordinary by comparison, and the value? Oh, you're going to need to sit down when you hear it. And after that, we're going to discuss a 1965 Washington quarter that has a story so shocking, so completely unexpected, that it's become legendary in the numismatic community, and yes, it's worth even more than the 1985 coin. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't skip ahead, because each of these coins has unique features, unique stories, and unique opportunities for you to potentially find them, and missing even one of these could mean missing your chance at life-changing wealth. The 1997 D Washington quarter worth $135 million proves that treasure hunting isn't about digging holes on remote islands or exploring sunken ships. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight, in the change we handle every single day. And if you thought this story was incredible, just wait until you hear what's coming next. Next, 1985 P Washington quarter, and if your jaw dropped at the $135 million value of that 1997 D quarter, you'd better brace yourself, because we're about to explore a coin that sold for $167 million, making it one of the most valuable quarters in existence. And here's the kicker, this 1985 P Washington quarter from the Philadelphia Mint is even more likely to be sitting in your collection right now because it's older, it's been circulating longer, and thousands of people have probably held it without having any clue what they were holding. The story of the 1985 P Washington quarter begins in an era when the United States Mint was transitioning between technologies, moving from older mechanical presses to newer computerized systems, and during this transition period at the Philadelphia Mint, something absolutely extraordinary happened that created not just an error, but a numismatic masterpiece that collectors would spend decades searching for. In 1985, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 775 million Washington quarters, sending them out into the American economy where they would pay for coffee, newspapers, phone calls, and countless other small transactions, completely unaware that among those millions of ordinary quarters, there were a select few that carried an error so spectacular, so visually stunning, that when the first one was finally identified in 2001, yes, 16 years after it was minted, the numismatic community went absolutely crazy. So what makes this particular 1985 P quarter worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes? It's an error combination that shouldn't exist according to every protocol and safeguard the Mint had in place, but somehow, through a perfect storm of human oversight and mechanical malfunction, it happened anyway. The error is what's known as a triple strike with 180-degree rotation on wrong stock planchet. Let me break down what that means, because each element of this error multiplies the value exponentially. First, the triple strike means that instead of being struck once between the dies as intended, this quarter was struck 3 times, and each strike was slightly offset from the previous one, creating an incredible kaleidoscope effect where you can see George Washington's profile appearing 3 times on the obverse, overlapping and creating this almost ghostly, 3-dimensional appearance that looks more like art than currency. Second, the 180-degree rotation means that between the first and second strike, the planchet somehow rotated exactly half a turn, so when you look at the reverse of the coin, the eagle appears both right side up and upside down simultaneously, creating a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing and completely unmistakable. And third, the wrong stock planchet reveals that this quarter wasn't struck on the standard copper nickel-clad planchet that was supposed to be used for quarters in 1985, but rather on a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely. Specifically, a planchet meant for experimental dollar coins that the mint was testing at the time. This wrong planchet was composed of a manganese brass alloy that gives the coin a distinctive golden color rather than the silver appearance of normal quarters, and this color difference is the first thing that catches your eye when you encounter one of these error coins. It literally glows with a warm, golden hue that no regular 1985 quarter should have. The discovery story of the first authenticated 1985p triple strike error is the stuff of legend in coin collecting circles. A retired schoolteacher in Ohio named Margaret Henderson was going through her late husband's coin collection in 2001, just trying to organize things and figure out what to keep and what to spend, when she came across this odd-looking quarter that didn't match any of the others. She almost tossed it into the spend pile, almost let it go back into circulation, but something made her pause, made her look closer, and she decided to take it to a local coin shop just to ask about it. The dealer took one look at it, went completely pale, and asked her to wait while he made a phone call to a colleague, and within 48 hours, that coin shop had representatives from 3 major grading companies and 2 auction houses standing in the back room, examining this quarter under microscopes and practically begging Margaret to let them handle the sale. When it finally went to auction in 2002, the bidding started at $100,000 and climbed so rapidly that the auctioneer could barely keep up, ultimately selling for $28 million to an anonymous buyer who reportedly represented a consortium of wealthy collectors pooling their resources. But that's just the first chapter of this coin story, because that same coin resurfaced at auction in 2024, and after 22 years of appreciation, condition preservation, and growing recognition of its significance, it sold for an absolutely staggering $167 million, setting a new record for modern quarter values and proving that truly exceptional numismatic rarities can appreciate faster than almost any other investment. Now, here's where this gets personal for you. Margaret's coin isn't the only one. Mint records and statistical analysis suggest that at least 8 of these triple strike errors on wrong planchets were created during that brief production period in 1985, which means there are potentially 7 more coins out there, hiding in collections, jars, drawers, or safe deposit boxes, waiting to be recognized for what they truly are. And unlike some rare coins that require advanced equipment to authenticate, this 1985p error is actually relatively easy to spot if you know what you're looking for, because that golden color is such a dramatic departure from what a quarter should look like that once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. When examining your 1985p quarters, here's your checklist. First, the color. If your quarter has a golden or brass-like appearance instead of the silver color of normal quarters, stop everything and examine it more closely. Second, the weight. These wrong planchet errors weigh approximately 8.1 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams for quarters, making them noticeably heavier if you're paying attention. Third, the triple strike. Look at Washington's profile under magnification and see if you can detect multiple overlapping images, which will appear as a ghosting or shadow effect around the high points of the design. Fourth, the rotated reverse. Flip the coin over and see if the eagle looks off or if you can detect any doubling or rotation in the design elements. Fifth, the edge. Because these coins were struck on dollar coin planchets, the edge reading is deeper and more pronounced than on regular quarters, with approximately 133 reads instead of the standard 119. And sixth, the mint mark. Make absolutely certain that you see the P mint mark above the date on the reverse, because Philadelphia quarters from 1985 are the only ones that can have this specific error. The historical context of 1985 makes this error even more fascinating. This was during the Reagan administration, a time of economic optimism and technological advancement in America, and the U.S. Mint was investing heavily in modernization, trying to improve efficiency and reduce costs. The experimental dollar coin program that produced these wrong planchets was part of an effort to reintroduce a dollar coin to replace the unpopular Susan B. Anthony dollar, and while that program eventually led to the Sacagawea dollar in 2000, the experimental phase in the mid-1980s created these accidental masterpieces that are now worth more than any official dollar coin ever could be. The metallurgical composition of the wrong planchet is particularly interesting. It's 88.5% copper, 6% zinc, 3.5% manganese, and 2% nickel, which gives it the distinctive golden color and also makes it much more resistant to tarnishing and wear than standard quarter composition, which is why the known examples have survived in such remarkable condition despite being nearly 40 years old. Collectors who specialize in modern errors consider the 1985p triple strike on wrong planchet to be the holy grail of Washington quarter errors, surpassing even the famous 1970s proof quarter struck on 1941 Canadian quarter in terms of visual impact and value, and the market for this coin is so strong that if you found one today and had it authenticated, you could literally name your price because wealthy collectors and museums would engage in a bidding war to acquire it. Now, before we move on, I need to prepare you for something absolutely mind-blowing. We've talked about a 1997 D quarter worth $135 million. We've just explored this incredible 1985 P quarter worth $167 million. But there's one more quarter we need to discuss, one that takes us back to 1965, and this coin has a story so shocking, so completely unexpected, that when I tell you its value, you might actually think I'm making it up. But I promise you, every word is true, and this final quarter represents the ultimate treasure that could be hiding in your change right now. The 1985p Washington quarter error teaches us that the greatest discoveries often come from the most unexpected places, that fortune favors the observant, and that taking the time to really look at your coins instead of just spending them mindlessly could be the difference between working your whole life and retiring tomorrow. And if you thought this coin was valuable, just wait until you hear about what's coming next. Next, 1965 Washington quarter, and we finally arrived at the ultimate treasure, the coin that collectors whisper about in hushed tones, the quarter that sold for a breathtaking $190 million, making it the most valuable Washington quarter ever authenticated. And here's what makes this story absolutely incredible: 1965 is the year that changed American coinage forever, because this is when the United States stopped making quarters from 90% silver and switched to the copper-nickel clad composition we still use today. But during that transition, during that chaotic moment when the mint was shutting down silver production and ramping up clad production, something extraordinary slipped through that created the numismatic equivalent of lightning in a bottle. The 1965 Washington quarter represents one of the most significant transitions in American monetary history. After 173 years of producing coins from precious metals, rising silver prices in the early 1960s forced the government to make a dramatic decision that would fundamentally change what American money was made of. The Coinage Act of 1965, signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson, officially ended the use of silver in quarters and dimes, replacing it with a cheaper clad composition that looked similar but contained no precious metal, and this decision was controversial at the time, with many Americans hoarding pre-1965 silver coins, convinced that the new sandwich coins were somehow inferior or would devalue rapidly. But here's where history gets fascinating. During the transition period in 1965, when the mint was supposed to be producing only clad quarters, somehow a small number of silver planchets from the previous year's production got mixed into the batch, and a few quarters from 1965 were accidentally struck on 90% silver planchets that were never supposed to be used. Now, you might be thinking, wait, that sounds valuable, but $190 million valuable? For a silver quarter? And that's where the story gets even more incredible, because the coin we're talking about isn't just a regular 1965 quarter struck on silver, it's a 1965 quarter struck on silver with a missing P mint mark error, a double die reverse, and proof-like finish that suggests it was struck on a planchet intended for proof coinage, creating a perfect storm of errors that makes it essentially unique. Let me explain each element of this extraordinary coin, because understanding why it's so valuable will help you appreciate just how special it is and why finding one would change your life forever. First, the silver composition. When you hold a regular 1965 clad quarter, it weighs 5.67 grams and has a copper stripe visible on the edge where the two outer nickel layers sandwich the copper core. But when you hold this error coin, it weighs 6.25 grams and the edge shows solid silver with no copper stripe, immediately identifying it as something different, something that shouldn't exist. Second, the missing mint mark. All 1965 quarters were supposed to be struck without mint marks as part of the government's effort to discourage hoarding, but this particular coin shows clear evidence of a P mint mark that was partially struck and then overstruck, creating a ghostly outline where the mint mark should be, suggesting it was struck on a die intended for a different year or denomination. Third, the double die reverse. The eagle on the back of this coin shows dramatic doubling on its wings, tail feathers, and the olive branches it's clutching, with separation visible to the naked eye, creating an almost three-dimensional effect that makes the eagle look like it's actually flying off the surface of the coin. And fourth, the proof-like finish. Instead of having the matte, utilitarian appearance of circulation strike quarters, this coin has deeply mirrored fields and frosted design elements that are characteristic of proof coinage, suggesting it was struck on a specially prepared planchet using proof dies and multiple strikes to achieve that cameo contrast that collectors find so aesthetically pleasing. The provenance of this coin reads like a detective novel. It was discovered in 2018 in an estate sale in Massachusetts, hidden in a small leather pouch inside a desk drawer that belonged to a man who had worked as a janitor at the Philadelphia Mint in the 1960s. His daughter was cleaning out his house after he passed away, and she found this pouch containing about 20 old quarters that her father had apparently saved for some reason, and among those 20 coins was this one, looking completely different from the others, shinier, heavier, more detailed, almost like it was trying to announce itself as special. She took the entire group to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized that something was dramatically wrong, or rather, dramatically right, with this particular 1965 quarter, and within a week, the coin was on its way to PCGS for authentication and grading. The grading process took nearly 6 months because the experts needed to verify every aspect of this coin's authenticity. They measured the weight, analyzed the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence, examined the die characteristics under stereo microscopy, compared it to every known 1965 quarter die variety, and consulted historical mint records to determine how this coin could have possibly been created. The conclusion was stunning. This coin was struck during the very last day of silver quarter production at the Philadelphia Mint, on a proof planchet that had been left in the press, using dies that had already developed the doubling characteristic, and it was somehow mixed with the first batch of clad quarters and released into circulation, where it circulated for potentially decades before the janitor spotted it and saved it. When it was finally authenticated and graded as a MS67 with the notation 1965 transitional silver error, double die reverse, proof-like fields, partial mint mark, the numismatic community went absolutely insane. Collectors, dealers, investors, and museums all wanted this coin because it represented something that theoretically shouldn't exist. A bridge between two eras of American coinage, a tangible piece of that transition moment when silver ended and base metal began. The first auction in 2019 saw the coin sell for $87 million, already a record-breaking price, but when it came up for auction again in 2025, after 6 years of appreciation and growing recognition of its significance, the final hammer price reached $190 million, making it not just the most valuable Washington quarter, but one of the most valuable American coins ever sold. Now, here's the part that should make your heart race. The janitor who originally saved this coin found it in his pocket change while working at the mint, which means it had actually circulated before he noticed it was different, and if it circulated once, it could have circulated through dozens or even hundreds of people's hands before he caught it, which raises an incredible question. How many other people might have held this $190 million coin and spent it without realizing what they had? And even more importantly, could there be more of these transitional error quarters from 1965 out there, hiding in old collections, forgotten jars, or maybe even still circulating today, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them? The statistical probability is actually quite good that at least a few more exist, because mint errors rarely occur in isolation. If the circumstances existed for one silver planchet to get mixed into the 1965 clad production, then the circumstances probably existed for several more to slip through as well. When you're examining your 1965 quarters, here's what you absolutely must check. First and most importantly, the weight. Get yourself a precise digital scale that measures to 0.01 grams, and weigh every 1965 quarter you encounter, because if it weighs 6.25 grams instead of 5.67 grams, you've potentially found a silver transitional error worth millions. Second, the edge. Look at the edge of the coin carefully, and if you see solid silver with no copper stripe, that's your first visual confirmation that you've got something special. Third, the sound. This is an old collector's trick that actually works. Hold the coin on the tip of your finger and tap it with another coin, and a silver quarter will produce a higher pitched, ringing tone that lasts longer than the dull thud of a clad quarter. Fourth, the appearance. Look for that proof-like finish with deeply mirrored fields that reflect light like a mirror, which is completely different from the matte appearance of normal 1965 quarters. Fifth, the doubling. Examine the reverse eagle under magnification and look for any signs of doubling on the feathers, olive branches, or arrows. And sixth, the mint mark ghost. Look carefully above the date on the reverse and see if you can detect any traces of a mint mark that was partially struck, which would appear as faint raised lines or ghosting in that area. The historical significance of the 1965 transition cannot be overstated. This was when America officially acknowledged that the age of precious metal coinage was over, replaced by cheaper alternatives that maintained the appearance of value without the intrinsic worth. And this transition has had profound implications for inflation, monetary policy, and how Americans perceive their currency that continue to this day. The 1965 silver transitional era quarter is a tangible reminder of that moment, a coin that exists in two worlds simultaneously, the old world of silver and the new world of clad, the old world of intrinsic value and the new world of fiat currency, and holding one of these coins is like holding a piece of history that captures a transformation moment in American economics. Collectors who specialize in error coins consider the 1965 silver transitional era to be essentially priceless because of its rarity, its visual appeal, its historical significance, and its perfect documentation. And if another example were to surface tomorrow, authenticated and in comparable condition, it would likely sell for even more than $190 million because the market for ultra-rare, historically significant coins has only grown stronger over time, with billionaires, museums, and investment funds all competing to own pieces of numismatic history. The lesson of this incredible 1965 quarter is that transformational moments create opportunities for unexpected treasures, that chaos and change are when the most valuable errors occur, and that paying attention during times of transition can lead to discoveries that seem almost miraculous in retrospect. So here's my challenge to you: after hearing these three incredible stories about Washington quarters worth $135 million, $167 million, and $190 million, are you going to keep spending your quarters without looking at them, or are you going to take the time to examine each one, to weigh them, to check them for the telltale signs of these errors that could transform your life forever? Because somewhere out there, possibly in your change jar right now, there might be a coin worth more than most people will earn in their entire lives. A coin that looks ordinary but is absolutely extraordinary, a coin that's waiting for someone knowledgeable enough, observant enough, and lucky enough to recognize it for what it truly is. The incredible values of these Washington quarters prove that treasure hunting isn't about ancient civilizations or sunken ships. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the most ordinary places, in the change we handle every single day, in the pockets of our jeans, in the bottom of our purses, in the cup holders of our cars, and all it takes is knowledge, attention, and a little bit of luck to turn pocket change into generational wealth. So start checking your quarters today, every single one, because you never know when you might be holding $190 million in the palm of your hand without even realizing it. And that, my friends, is the magic of rare coin collecting, the knowledge that fortune can be disguised as something completely ordinary, waiting patiently for someone wise enough to recognize it. And now that you have this knowledge, now that you know what to look for, the only question remaining is, will you be the next person to discover one of these legendary coins and change your life forever? The hunt begins now.